Hello and welcome back to Post Sports Live. I'm your host, Jonathan Forsythe. Joining me in the Post TV studios here, LaVar Arrington, Mike Wise, and Dan Steinberg. Welcome back, gentlemen. Happy Tuesday. How's everybody today?
Very well.
It's Masters Week. I know that's what you guys all want to talk about, so we'll get to that later. Just kidding. I wish we had a full show on that.
A tradition like none other.
Like none other.
Yes.
Sunday, the Masters Sunday is one of the top moments in sports. All right, Dan's shaking his head already. All right.
Hello, friends.
Before we get too far,
whiter than ever again.
Before we get too far along in the show, I want to give credit where credit is due for Mr. Arrington for the bold prediction last week. UConn called UConn to not only beat Florida but to win it all.
Yeah.
Riding the hot hand of Shabazz Napier, which they did. That was bold, and you nailed it. Nice job.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I take full credit for knowing that, and pay attention to what I say, not Dan Steinberg.
There you go. All right, well, with that, let's get into the show. Lots to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Nationals and some early season storylines that may or may not be worth worrying about for the team. Also, some good things that have sort of shown themselves in the first week. We'll talk about the Wizards and talk about Nene's. He's nearing return. He's starting to practice with the team. Should he come back before the playoffs, and if so, why? We'll talk about the Capitals and who's going to take the majority of the blame once they're on the brink. They have like a 1% chance of making the playoffs. If they do miss the playoffs for the first time in several years, who gets the majority of the blame, McPhee or Oates? And then finally, we'll talk about the RGIII logo, which came out over the weekend to a lot of hoopla. I know you guys have some feelings about that, and I'm curious about the timing for that. That'll be our...
Stick around for that, America. You are going to hear fireworks.
All right, well, with that tease, let's get into the Nationals first. And Mike, I'll start with you on the Nats. Yeah. What is the team's biggest early season concern in your mind? There's lots to choose from. Yeah. Give me what you think is the biggest reason to worry about the Nats.
Well, partly because I like the guy, and also because he's from the original team here. Ryan Zimmerman and his throwing problem and his shoulder, I think that's been lingering from last season. And it actually goes back a couple seasons now, but we're talking surgery, we're talking rehab. Everything that he could possibly do for this shoulder has been done. And you wonder if it's just going to be a chronic thing that's going to carry over for much longer than it should and really make the contract that he signed not a bargain in any shape or form.
Yeah, the extension, he's only 1 week into that $100 million extension.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you think?
I think that's a good one. And, going further, even if he moves to first base, which is probably his eventual destination, if he can't play third base this season, they have a real issue because Adam LaRoche can't play anywhere besides first base. And you can't have two of your main hitters that both play the same position. That just doesn't make any sense. I think that's a good one. I think it's amazing how many legitimate choices there are for a team that's 4-2. I mean, they're 4-2. Everything should be fine. There's like so many storylines that could be troubling. Mine's going to be the Braves, which I talked about a couple weeks ago here.
Yep.
They just had the Nationals number so much last year, and coming in this first series at home with the Braves kind of reeling from all these injuries, just like kind of win a series you would have hoped. And going into that last game, obviously it's early April, but you don't want to get swept at home by the Braves. It almost felt like, not a must-win clearly, but it felt like a potential crucial game in the first week of April. So it's kind of bizarre, but I think that at some point this season, if they want to get back to first place, they're going to have to beat the Braves. It's not losing 2 out of 3 every time or getting swept like they did so many times last year. That's not going to cut
it. Taylor Jordan stepped up big in that Sunday game, too, for a guy who's with a maybe fifth starter.
A lineup of a bunch of AAA guys.
Right, a bunch of guys had the day off, Zimmerman and Harper. All right, what do you got, LaVar? What's your biggest area of concern for the team this early?
I want to piggyback off of what Wise was speaking of. I think it's going to be health. I think there have been some quick injuries that have taken place that you look at the lineup and it lends to you starting to think, are they going to be able to stay healthy with everything that they have going on? So
Wilson Ramos right off the bat was a key.
That's Doug Fister before the season even started.
Yeah. It's just so to me, I think that when you look roster wise, what this team is capable of doing when everybody's healthy, I think they can do well. But it just seems like very quickly and very early you're seeing health concerns. And if you can't stay healthy, it's going to be hard for you to have the bullseye once again on your back and on your chest and on your head to be able to win.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere, and you don't have the guys out there to help you get those wins.
Let me ask you guys this. Of the two that weren't mentioned, Harper's slow start, batting 143, 10 strikeouts, seems lost at the plate, and he said so. And Steven Strasburg, 0-1. He's had 2 starts. He's still striking people out, 16 strikeouts, but he's got a +6 ERA. Of those 2, which one worries you the most, or would give you pause for concern? You can write both off to being early.
I can't say, for the sake of saying it, that one of them concerns me. I believe it's early.
Still too early for both.
And I think that they're too gifted and too good. I mean, that first showing by Strasburg when he mowed down 10 guys.
After
he looked good against the Mets.
Right. I can't sit there and say there's cause for concern. And then someone like Bryce Harper is going to find he's too gifted an athlete to not find his way. So it's too early to sit there and feel like I'm concerned that one of them may not have the type of season they should have.
Too early to Mike, or would you take one or the other?
Only Strasburg, because even though Adam Kilgore did a great story on him finding balance with a child and all the things that go along with his life now, I still think he internalizes a lot, and he pitches every 5 days. So this isn't a guy who's out there hacking at the ball like Bryce Harper and trying to find his rhythm at the plate. He's a guy who really.
I'm sorry, I thought I was laughing on something else.
And so here's a guy in my mind that if he has a bad start, he internalizes it for 4 or 5 days.
And he didn't respond well to the Zimmerman error the other day.
Yeah, that's why I actually disagree with Mike, because I thought Strasburg, the first start, there was the 1 3-run homer. There's 3-run homer, I think. That kind of, that obviously slanted his ERA. And the second start, he had that inning, he kind of went off the rails a little bit because of that Zimmerman throwing error. But I think Harper, the thing that bugs me about him so far, and to the extent that it matters at all,
right.
It's so weak into the season, and he's throwing his bat and throwing his helmet. He threw his helmet twice against dude, just chill out a little bit. I know that I know how great he wants to be, but I think it's too early in the season to be chucking things around.
And you mentioned it. They're 4-2. That's still worth repeating. They're not in first place. It's way too early in a long season to get too worked up about it. But they still have a winning record. They open up a series against the surprisingly first-place Marlins at Nats Park tonight. Guys, let's move on to the Wizards. And LaVar, reports are that Nene is back to practicing with the team. Not quite doing everything with the team and running at full speed, but he's close. My question to you is, should Nene return to action before the playoffs, and if so, why?
If he's ready, yes. If he's physically ready to return, he should return. For one, he's a leader on the team. 2, it's your job. 3, I think that to get him back in game condition, practice condition is much different than game condition. So I don't think that you want to try to ease him back into a series that is in the playoffs if you can stand it. I think you want to give him an opportunity to get his game legs back. He's been out for an extended amount of time. So if he's able physically to get back out there health-wise, I think you get him in.
Mike, Wizards are 12-9 since he's been out with the injury. Would you agree with LaVar?
I not only agree, I think it's paramount that he comes back. I don't think they win. I don't think they have a shot to win the playoff series if he goes into that, and they're finding 2 games in how to play together again. Nene isn't one of those guys who goes in and tips back misses or hits a couple baseline followaways. He's almost like a point center on the floor, and it changes the flow, it changes the way they play, and those guys need to learn to play together again before the playoffs, not during them. If they do it during them, they'll be swept or they'll lose in 5 games.
Dan, do you agree?
I agree, and I'm going to add another issue, which is sort of like the confidence factor. I think if they go in and he hasn't played at all and they don't know what they're getting out of him, how many minutes, whether he's going to be able to play, I sort of think that they need to believe that this recent stumble is not the way that they're going to go into the playoffs, that they are that team that we saw for 2/3 of the season. And I think that they can't really be that team without Nene. So I think that just for that confidence factor, they need to know that he's going to be part of that playoff rotation.
Now they're 5-5 in their last 10. Big game against Charlotte Wednesday night, which is basically for the 6th seed. It's
monstrous game.
It's a playoff game, even though they've already made the playoffs.
Actually, I want to ask, why is the Pacers question? Because we talked about it last week, but you weren't here. Some people are now thinking with Indiana stumbling the way they are, it maybe will be better for the Wizards to fall to 7th and play them. Do you buy that at all, or do you think they're going to ride it?
No, I just think I don't think they're going to ride it as in beat Miami for the East. I still like the Heat coming out still, but I do think that the Pacers are going to have enough to get past a first-round series, even in their stumbling, bumbling ways.
But do you think the Wizards match up about as tough against the Pacers as anybody?
Yeah, you're right, but and I know that Toronto's killed them. The fact that Toronto has no playoff experience on that roster almost. And Tom Thibodeau, got that Bulls team, a worse Bulls team, to win a 7th game in Brooklyn last year. If I had my druthers, I would take Toronto. And that's not just because I want me and Steinberg and Eaton Center on the company dime.
I don't travel anymore, man.
Hanging out with. Do you even have a passport?
I do, but I don't travel. But I appreciate that.
All right, VAR,
it's not in his contract.
Okay.
He doesn't have to.
Wait,
travel.
are you traveling? You're traveling with the team for the playoffs?
I believe so.
Do you think Toronto's a better trip than Brooklyn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Toronto better than Brooklyn. Yeah, it's a little cleaner.
Better than
like
Indiana
Brooklyn.
too, right? Better than Indiana for sure.
Indiana's definitely the 4th seed.
I like
Indiana.
Junior.
So wait, going back to the original, we only have a few seconds left in this segment here, guys. But so you guys are not worried at all about the prospect of Nene coming back too soon and then re-injuring himself during the regular season when they've already clinched the playoff.
Coming back too soon is coming back and not being ready to play.
Okay.
To me, that's coming back too soon. If he's ready to play, if he's cleared to play, then he should play. He should, especially if it's still regular season, because he wants to knock that rust off.
So it's not one of those. If they have the 6th seed and it looks secure, you still bring him back to get knocked the rust off.
This isn't a first seed team. This isn't a team that is
I'm just double checking.
So dominant that you could just rest him.
If Nene gets hurt in a game in which he just came back, he shouldn't have been on the court in the first place.
Or he was going to get hurt in that playoff game.
Then you have the argument to have held him to the playoffs. All right, Dan, you have a final thought?
No, we all agree.
No, I'm trying to fabricate something here. You guys all agree.
You want some fire? We'll get into it.
All right, let's move on to the Capitals, guys. A team that's on the other end of the playoff spectrum. With 4 games remaining, they're 4 points behind Columbus. There's a couple teams in between them, Toronto and New Jersey. If, assuming the Caps miss the playoffs, Mr. Steinberg, who deserves more blame, George McPhee or Adam Oates?
This is interesting. I was kind of curious where these guys are going to go. I would fall pretty much squarely on George McPhee, because George McPhee is responsible for Adam Oates. In addition to being responsible for this roster, he's responsible for this coach, and he has a history of hiring first-time head coaches, guys who maybe don't have quite the experience level. It worked out well with Boudreau, but there was the Bruce Cassidy failure, and this Oates thing sure seems to be a failure. I don't see how the responsibility ultimately for missing the playoffs falls on anyone but McPhee. That doesn't mean that he doesn't get credit for what they've done the past few years. He certainly does. But I think for this year, for this failure, for the defense falling apart, for the offense not having enough, for Adam Oates having to put Ovechkin with Beagle and kind of having his lines make no sense for much of the last few weeks, I think it all goes back to McPhee, really. And I think if they make a change at the GM spot, they probably do make a change at the coaching spot too, because the new guy would want to hire his own guy. But I think that whether or not Oates survives the season, I think that McPhee is the guy that takes the most of the blame.
Mike, your thoughts?
It's sort of like what does the baby go out with the bathwater? Mm-hmm. They probably go out together. If in fact, it'd still be interesting to me if Ted Leonsis has the guts to actually hire and fire a general manager. He hasn't done either yet. He has basically kept the people that have been there that he had when he bought the franchises. And I always say he hires, he doesn't hire GMs, he hires Supreme Court justices. But I got to think that with everything that's happened, you have to do something with George McPhee. It's probably one of the last cards you could play with your fan base, which is almost flabbergasted at this point. They don't even, they're sort of like, we got these exciting players. What are we doing? We're not even the team we were 3 years ago. Adam Oates, I've been told outside the organization, not inside the organization, is going to be gone no matter what. And that's from people who talk to people inside the organization. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do know that at some point, I don't know if you guys saw, there's like friction between McPhee and Oates now. They're saying different things about what's going on with the roster and what's going on with the team and how things are being used. And so I think right now is a critical time where McPhee's trying to distance himself from Oates. And I don't think, like Dan said, I don't think he can. He's the guy who hired him.
That's an interesting point. That was going to be my next question, is who's the more likely to be fired at the end of the season? LaVar, I'm curious, coming off of Mike's point, does Leonsis have a choice, given the collective din among the fans and just complete, utter distaste and distrust of how this team has been put together with all the disappointments in the past?
I'll say this. I don't think that it's 100% cut and dry the way that it was kind of just explained. I think if you look at some of the success that this team has had throughout the years. You also got to look at the level of talent that they were playing against at those point in times. That's worth taking a look at. They did have a harder way to go this year with the realignment. When I look at what Boudreaux was able to get out of this group of guys, at least the ones that are still here, there was a lot of offensive production. Then you see there's this whole shift in how things are done, and then it's more defensively. Again, I think that the main issue, in my opinion, just someone who has watched the team and has learned about the game, I think that they're not physical enough to be a contending team. It's too much finesse. You don't have enough physicality with what it is that you're bringing to the table. But I also believe that they have not been able to figure out the way that teams have played against them ever since that playoff game against Montreal. And for that, I think now, because you've invested so much money and you've invested so much kind of publicity and so much
minute
push.
To the clock. We're doing good on time so far.
You've put so much in terms of pushing Ovechkin and Mike Green and Nicholas Backstrom that it's not so simple to just say the GM can get rid of these players. You have to try to find someone that you feel can actually utilize these assets that this team has. And for that, I think that it does have to fall more on the coach than it does the GM, because in reality, you want to sell tickets, and you bring in a coach that has a healthy affinity from the fan base. He has a healthy respect from the players. People talk about how smart he is and his mental prowess and what he brings to the table and the success he had before he came here, even though he wasn't a head coach. You look at what George McPhee does, you say to yourself, if you can make sense of why George McPhee made that decision, which I think coming into it, when Oates was brought in, everybody was on the same accord that it made sense to bring this type of a guy in. He's a player's coach. He's smart. He'll coach the way that he played, and that just hasn't been the case. And for that, I think it does fall more on the coach, more so than on the GM.
Some more on us.
We'll gobbled up that entire extra minute.
Yeah, that was good. It was good. I had a follow-up question for you guys. We'll save that to next week. We'll have plenty of time to talk about the players and how you break up the core potentially.
Yeah, there's going to be quite a deconstruction of everything that happened.
There will, and we'll talk about that next week on the show. So tune in for that. All right, guys. Now to the dessert at the end of this show, and that is the RG3 logo. Lots of hoopla was made of this over the weekend on social media. We wrote about it. Dan, you wrote about it in the blog. I'll give you the first crack at this. Thoughts on the new logo and the timing of the new logo?
The timing doesn't really bother me. The timing doesn't really bother me that much. The logo thing and the unveil, and I know this is kind of like a cheap ESPN first takey subject a little bit, but I actually was finding myself get a little bit fired up about this, because it wasn't just that he has a logo. I don't care that he has a logo. Lots of athletes have logos. That's totally fine. But it's the fact that he had to make it an announcement 24 hours before the logo came out that something big was coming, that he had to time the launch of his Instagram account, that he had to get in touch with all the reporters and tell them to hype up the fact that something big was coming, that he didn't just say, this is my new logo, but he said, this is for my family, this is for the community, this is for the fans, that he had to say,
conquering hero.
When people criticized it, that people say one thing to your face and another thing behind your face. Like, all of this stuff, to me, it's just silly and like a little bit lame. Like, after last year, after All In for Week 1, after that all blew up in his face, after the Adidas marketing campaign became a storyline in a really, really unsuccessful season, after his coach got fired, after he got benched, I just think it's a little bit lame to come right back in with another marketing campaign.
And I completely disagree.
Go ahead, Mike.
This is a great moment in American society. This is the unveiling of the Washington American Logos Foundation. This will help Native Americans. I am telling you right here.
Logo Americans.
Yeah, the Logo Americans. Look, you can't. I don't know how you could take another side on this. I mean, the thing looks like a maze, by the way. It looks like the thing Jack.
It looks like a home plate.
It looks like
a
the thing
baseball
Jack.
home
I'll tell
plate.
you what it looks like. It looks like a sneaky Superman mixed with Optimus Prime.
So, that's not bad.
Now be careful.
I think
be
it looks,
careful because
I think it
what
looks,
we're basically saying is he thinks he's Superman and Optimus Prime all in one.
Well, that's really deep, LaVar. I see.
And that's for all his family and his friends and for the haters.
I see the overhead diagram of the maze that that Jack Nicholson got stuck in The Shining at the end. Wendy, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brain. But I guess what I'm getting at is you know what I want to hear on the Instagram account? You know what I want to see? I want to see Robert Griffin III has had a backyard picnic for all his new receivers. Andre Roberts, Deshaun Jackson. I want to have them all have a passing camp for about a week and drink lemonade and have sandwiches made by mom. And I want to see a teammates bonding out there in the offseason. And I don't want it to be RG me again. Stop with the RG me. That didn't work last year.
Good point. This team went 3-13 last year, right?
Oh God! What a transition! What a transition! Because the funny thing is, what I really noticed about the logo was the 3, and I immediately thought of 3 wins. So how fitting that you have your logo with 3 wins. Right after the season, you had 3 wins. You made a very valid point off camera that needs to be stated. Who in their right mind, after a 3-win season, and a lot of it based upon some of the things that people feel as though you created. If Kirk Cousins starts while you're still recovering, maybe this season isn't mortgaged. Maybe Mike Shanahan is still the head coach of this team. A lot of the woes of this team were based upon considered to be and interpreted selfish acts by one person and his family. Now, when you look at where we're at right now, fast forward, who comes out and promotes and pushes a logo? And keep in mind you, he had a phenomenal rookie season, but now you are a veteran in this game. You are a vet. So you're not based or judged off of your rookie year. You are now based off of what took place last season. Do not stand on the laurels of what happened in your rookie year. So with that being said, how the hell do you come out and release a logo and you're promoting and you're pushing? Let these companies do that. Let these companies, Adidas did it. Let Adidas do it.
But don't you think they're coaching him to do it? Like this is part of the campaign?
Yes, he's getting bad advice.
And they're going to ruin his career.
They're
going to ruin that young man's career.
You know what they're doing? You know what they're doing, guys? They're taking a very likable person. Who anybody spend any time with this guy? I think not he's charismatic. I think he's a very likable, smart guy. He's somebody that I said once. It bothers me that I didn't have that maturity at that age. And I look now and I go, the people around him are taking a likable guy and making him unlikable.
It's amazing.
It's wrong.
It's amazing.
Like I say, if anyone watches this, and this is stuff I haven't really written, if anyone watches this, they'll say that we're all hating on him and that we're all being haters, whatever.
Fine.
And I love RG3. I think he's a great kid. I love what he's brought to this community. I think it's all cool. And I don't think any of us are staying up late at night.
Take RG3 out of the situation. This happened with Jim Zorn. This happened with Mike Shanahan. It happened with Jason Campbell. It happened. You can look at countless amounts of people who were ushered into this city, into this sports sphere, and were force-fed to this fan base. You are force-fed. If y'all think back, they were comparing Jim Zorn to Allen.
That's a joke. You
remember that? You remember when Jim Zorn was winning all those games?
Dallas and Philly.
Right? Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
My point was that. Look, I don't think that.
This is a track record here. We're not hating. We know this city.
It just seems like it would be better if you didn't do it. That's my only point. It's not that it's going to cost them any games. It's not like it's a giant deal. It just seems like the optics would be better, and it's going to be another thing. If they are 3-7, people are going to say, "How's that logo helping you now?" And it just is unnecessary. That's all I would say.
The other thing that you sort of discounted at the beginning is the timing of it. Right on the heels of the big news about Deshaun Jackson signing, it just, even if this was in the works before and Adidas had this campaign lined up for this past weekend, it just reeks of a little bit of the RG me, which you mentioned.
This is not the redemption of a person. This season should be about the redemption of a franchise.
Right.
It's classic. Oversaturation.
We're
of a
classic
person.
overtime on this segment.
We're
So
not
with
haters.
that,
We're all
we're not
lovers.
trying to hate. We're
Says the
just
guy
trying to
who
have
has
a good
radio
conversation
show
about it.
and he works for the
For
Post.
Dan
Well, I can
Steinberg,
oversaturate.
Mike
I'm in
Wise,
media.
LaVar Arrington,
Well,
I'm your
that was
host, Jonathan Forsythe. We'll see you next Tuesday right here, same place, same time on Post Sports Live.
Oh, I'm a hater. How did I become a hater?